Hi, I'm Susanna Balin, founder and CEO of AC Health, and my presentation today is asking a pretty provocative question. Can an app solve the patient compliance dilemma? Give me 28 minutes or so to dig into the science of AC Health's development, and then you be the judge. I'll begin my story with a bit about my own background, and most importantly, why this is so personal to me. Then I'll introduce you to the evidence-based research in behavioral science that informed the development of the AC Health app. And finally, I'll show you how AC Health is working today for physical and occupational therapists and their patients, how we measure that engagement, and what our future plans are for the app to make it even more engaging and supportive for patients while it solves pain points for therapists. I turned 59 on February 20th of this year. I have 3 grown daughters, and my husband and I live most of the time in New York City. I have an MBA and founded a business previously that helped recent college grads choose the most appropriate work. Obviously, I'm not a therapist, but I have been a patient quite a few times, which brings me to why this is so personal. Let me tell you how it happened the first time. In 2005, I broke my finger. In fact, I dislocated it and without really knowing it, put it back into place. It was very painful. I went to the doctor and he told me I had done a pretty good job putting it back straight, but that after the inflammation went down, I'd have to go into physical therapy for probably a few weeks. So I did, though the exercises hurt terribly, and I really didn't do my exercises in between sessions. Well, about a year and a half later, I noticed that my finger could not straighten out. So I went back to my physical therapist and I said, "Can you help me straighten my finger?" And the physical therapist said, "I'm sorry, but the reason you can't straighten it is because you didn't do your exercises between sessions, and the only thing you can do now is to have surgery." And as you can see, I have elected not to do that. But as the universe would have it, I would have another opportunity to be a good physical therapy patient in another couple of years. I was 52 and my shoulder started bothering me. My friends told me I probably had bursitis and that I should see a chiropractor. So I went to the chiropractor 2 or 3 times a week. After 3 weeks, it was really actually getting a lot worse. So my husband insisted I went to see the doctor. So I saw my doctor and she did all of the tests and told me that nothing was structurally wrong and that I probably had something called frozen shoulder. And the only thing she could do for me was give me a cortisone shot for the pain, but that I needed to go into physical therapy. So back to physical therapy I went, but this time I knew I was going to be a much better patient and actually do my exercises in between sessions. So I made an appointment and ended up in a huge room, which was actually much larger than the room that you see in the photograph here. There were 4 or 5 therapists working on somewhere between 12 and 18 patients, lots of equipment. I was put into a chair. Someone put a heating pad on my shoulders. When my heating pad beeped, a lovely young woman came over to me, introduced herself, and told me that she was going to be treating me, did an intake session, and said, "Yes, I'm pretty sure you have frozen shoulder, and I'm sorry," which now I know why she winced, because it really is a very difficult diagnosis. And then she said, "Okay, let's get started right away." So she told me to lean on the bench, and she showed me a pendulum stretch exercise where I was supposed to maneuver my arm counterclockwise 12 times and then clockwise another 12 times, and that I should do this 3 times while she went and cared for her other patients. So I did the exercise. I wasn't sure I was doing it right. And then when she came back, she was in a rush. So we went through all the exercises. And at the end of the exercises, she handed me a bunch of paper diagrams and circled 5 of them. Showed me quickly how to do 2 of them, which I hadn't done while she was with other patients, and said, I'll see you on Thursday. And so I continued seeing her 3 times a week. Now, I tried to do my exercises in between sessions, but again, they hurt. I wasn't exactly sure I was doing them right. I would come into the next session and she'd ask me if I was doing my exercises, and I would tell her that I wasn't sure whether it was better to do them and have them be not correctly performed or not do them, and she was in a pretty big rush. So we just went through the exercises, she showed me again, and she asked me to really remember how to do them properly. The truth is that I'm pretty sure I didn't. So after about 6 weeks of treatment, I was having lunch with a friend. One of these sheets of paper fell out of my bag, and she said, I didn't know you were in PT. I remember getting those diagrams. I hate them. And she began to tell me about her current physical therapist, who was in a small private practice with one other therapist. She said I'd get a lot more attention if I moved over to them. But she said that the best thing about her therapist, Brian, was he was the first PT who she had ever gone to that did not expect her to follow the ridiculous stick figures. So I said, well, if you're not using the stick figures, what is he doing? And she said, video. He takes her phone from her, opens the camera, and records her doing the exercise while he talks to her and tells her what to do. She then goes home and watches the exercise and always performs it properly. She said it changed everything for her. So I left the large clinic, and I made an appointment with Brian. After he manipulated me, made the adjustments, and treated me, he asked for my phone. I gave it to him. He told me to lie down on a bench, and then he proceeded to talk me through the 5 or 6 exercises he wanted me to do between sessions. When I got home, I could watch the video as often as I needed to. I could stop it to make sure I was doing it properly. And I finally felt comfortable doing my exercises because I knew I was doing them right. And I loved it. I wasn't afraid that I was doing my exercises incorrectly. And I was thrilled that each time I saw him, I could say, I did all my exercises. And he said, I know, because you're progressing very well. But it made me really feel terrific. I asked him, though, why he was still giving paper diagrams to some of his patients. And he told me that they were frustrated by having to go and find the video in their phone camera. Then they also were frustrated that they had to watch the whole video to be reminded how many sets and reps to do and then go back and start again. And many of them really just didn't want to give Brian their phone. They were very uncomfortable with him holding on to the phone. So I said to Brian, if I develop an app that solves all of those issues, would you commit to a pilot at your clinic? He agreed, and AC Health began development. Now, because I have a background in business, I knew I had to start with market research. So I interviewed many therapists and patients just to make sure that the experience I had and the experience Brian had was shared by enough people to make it worthwhile to start a company. I learned that patients hated the diagrams like I did. However, surprisingly, that they also didn't like the professionally produced videos that some therapists sent in emails because the models didn't have their body type. They obviously weren't in pain, and they weren't doing the exercises exactly the way their therapist had shown them during the session. From therapists, I learned that compliance was still a problem, even if they sent these emails, and now I knew why patients weren't following them. And it took them hours in between sessions to create these treatment plans for patients who often didn't even show up to their next appointment. So it was time to build AC Health. Now, what was clear to me was that my behavior had changed dramatically between my first experience with PT, with my broken finger, and my latest treatment with Brian. The clinical experience was not particularly different, though. All my therapists were extremely knowledgeable and gave me excellent clinical care. So why did I change my behavior? Was it because I was watching my own therapist, whom I trusted, remind me what to do? Was it because I had everything on my phone so I couldn't lose pieces of paper and it was easy to access? Was it because I developed a habit using my phone's reminder to schedule my at-home routines? Having previously studied the psychology of behavioral change for my first company, I decided to seek out evidence-based research whose observations and conclusions could be added to the patient experience inside the AC Health app. So now I'll give you a brief overview of 5 theories that went into the development of the app and how we applied them. The first is SMART goals. In November of 1981, George Doran wrote a paper that outlined the 5 traits of a goal that had a better chance of being achieved. SMART is an acronym for small, measurable, actionable, realistic or relevant, and time-sensitive. Making sure that you can apply those 5 adjectives to your goals increase the probability that you will be successful achieving them. We use this framework to build the user experience. Each click opens to a small commitment. An exercise is between 15 and 30 seconds. Progress is measured over the time of the treatment as photos track improvement. It's realistic and relevant because the exercise is recorded by your own therapist. And you know you can do it. It's actionable because it's designed specifically for you. And finally, as it's performed between sessions, it's time sensitive. The second is research conducted by B.J. Fogg in his behavioral design lab at Stanford University. The Fogg behavioral method proves that sustained behavioral change comes from 3 ingredients: motivation, wanting to achieve the goal; ability, being able to do it easily; and a trigger, remembering to complete an activity. Start people off with baby steps. They feel successful as they complete them. Their motivation rises as they see they're successful. They're hopeful that they will reach their goal as they develop more ability and more motivation, etc., etc. So we took this research and created a patient goal screen so that the therapist and the patient can agree on a goal together. Therapists learn what really is motivating that patient to complete their treatment, whether it's being able to play on the floor with their grandchildren without pain, or getting back to their running program so that they can run a half marathon. The app gives them the ability to make it so easy to access all of their treatment exercises in one place, and the trigger is a push notification reminder they set that syncs with their device's calendar into their schedule. And that way, we took the research and applied it to the app. The third theory is Dr. Ralf Schwarzer's. He's a psychologist in Berlin, Germany, whose health behavior self-efficacy research demonstrated that the most important predictor for sustaining motivation through a health-related improvement was self-efficacy, or the belief in one's ability to succeed at a goal. That if you believe you can do it, you will choose to create a plan, follow that plan, and execute on that plan until you reach your desired outcome. For me, that belief that I would reach my physical therapy treatment goal was based on Brian's belief in me, his commitment to support me throughout my treatment, which was 18 months, made me feel like I could do it. This research informed the development of AC Health's in-app messaging experience. What if I, as a patient, am at home and I can't do the exercise that the therapist recorded even because it hurts too much? If I don't believe I can do it, I will feel less self-efficacy. And writing a text message to my therapist will probably get a reply that says, we'll just go over it next time, which is not useful. What if there was video messaging in the app so that a patient could record themselves doing the exercise, show them where the pain was, and then get a quick video back explaining the solution. I immediately am able to do it and am back to feeling that I can succeed. That is why messaging in the AC Health app offers all three modes of communication: text, images, and video. The fourth piece of research was conducted by Dan Ariely and Kristin Berman at Duke University. Their research concluded that to reach a behavioral change that improves your life, you need to identify key behaviors rather than focus on outcomes, reduce barriers that add friction, and make those behaviors hard to do, and amplify the benefits to maintain motivation. Friction and barriers to doing my exercise were everywhere in my first PT experiences. I had to keep track of paper, and I had to figure out the three-dimensional equivalent of a two-dimensional diagram. I had to find videos in my camera or print emails that I had to find among all my emails or access a portal, and the list goes on and on. So this research informed AC Health's simple user experience. One screen for all of your exercises. The therapist makes the changes, adds the content. I always go back to the same place every single time for my most current exercises. One screen to check my messages. One screen to check my progress. In addition, rewards were added to amplify the benefits. These include badges, achievements, and points available for therapists to provide incentive for compliance, such as gift cards, swag, props that are used in therapy, or books on pain management and supportive topics. Finally, the work of Dr. John Norcross, professor of psychology at the University of Scranton and author of the best-selling book Changeology, explains how to achieve goals by staying on course throughout a continuum of activities and be supported to avoid relapses into old patterns. This research led us to develop a technology that is able to support your patients with far more than exercises. Therapists can upload motivational audio, visualizations, articles, photos, any content they choose to keep their patients on the path to success. AC Health's library feature allows therapists to upload any material they want once, and it is available to prescribe to any patient in one click from then on, saving enormous amounts of time. After adding to the care plan, that content can be dynamically edited to ensure the most personalized instructions, reconfirming that the therapist sees the patient as a unique individual with a unique situation. And so today, AC Health is live on iOS, at the App Store, and Android and Google Play. Everything in the app is, of course, HIPAA compliant and meets the privacy requirements of school systems. Documentation is available at your request. So, the final question I ask is, how do we know it's working? Well, let's start with patience. Every product and service, from sneakers to restaurants, need a way to measure customer satisfaction. So what's the best way? I'll focus on the most respected satisfaction measurement called the Net Promoter System, designed by one of the top 3 management consulting firms in America, the Bain Consulting Group. Their work analyzed the traits of the most satisfied customers. They determined that what sets apart a product is whether or not their customers promote that product to their network. So they researched that and created a tool called the Net Promoter Score, often referred to as an NPS score. The tool measures the economics of loyalty, basically that the higher the score, the more likely that the product or service will profitably scale by word of mouth and referral, grow quickly via evangelism, and advocacy for its benefits. It works by asking the customers of a product or service the following question. On a scale of 1 to 10, how likely are you to recommend this product or service to a friend or family member? A score of 1 to 6 is from a detractor, someone who sees the problems with the product or service just as much as the benefits. A score of 7 or 8 is from a passive user who enjoys the product or service but isn't really gung-ho. And a score of 9 to 10 is from a promoter, someone who says, oh my gosh, I love this and I'm going to tell everyone I know. It's scored on a range of 1 to 100. 50 is considered a very good score. Basically, for every 1 you get, you also receive a 10. 75 is a great score, as most customers give you at least a 5. Now, AC Health used a third-party platform to conduct an NPS survey with our first 640 patients so that it would be done anonymously. And we were thrilled to receive a 91. We strongly believe that the evidence-based research that informed our development has made a significant difference in patient satisfaction. The next question is, do rehab therapists think that AC Health is working as well as the patients do? The first thing we did was look at the numbers. Are video instructions being added? Are patients being added? To date, more than 10,000 instructions have been uploaded into the platform, and 90% of therapists add patients within 24 hours of having their demo or training. 70% of the therapists using the app have referred it to a fellow therapist, which is very gratifying since they are making a recommendation to their professional network. Next, we sent a survey to gather qualitative data and conducted many one-on-one interviews. We heard responses like, for the first time, and my patients absolutely love it. And even more specifically, stories like, I have a 72-year-old patient who is very tough to work with. And for the first time after giving him the app, he came in smiling and asking me to add a series of stretching exercises right away so that he wouldn't be so stiff getting out of bed. We also learned from therapists that AC Health is saving them hours a week since they no longer have to spend time after appointments to send emails with exercise plans. Moreover, patient referrals rose, new patient inquiries from current patients rose, and doctors whose patients gave reviews of their clinic also went up. And most importantly, patient compliance improved, which of course led to better outcomes. My favorite feedback from therapists is when they ask us to develop a feature that they need. We're particularly proud by the speed with which our development occurs. We can generally launch a feature within a few weeks, sometimes in as little as a few days. One example is the Move feature, which came from therapists who want their patients to perform their exercises in a certain order and asked us if there was an easy way to move them around. We added a sequence step where all of the exercises in that patient's care plan appear, and by holding down on any one, you can move them into a different order and save them immediately. Another example is that we were told an exercise would be recorded for that moment in treatment, but then the therapist wanted to hide that exercise from the patient and then bring it back into the care plan after a few weeks. So we created the archive feature to make it hidden from the patient, but inactive and available to the therapist to be able to be added back at any time. Finally, we looked at the messaging feature, which I've mentioned with its text, image, and video options to see how it was being used. The response has been extraordinary. That level of support between sessions has had the greatest effect on outcomes. Patients feel connected with their therapist at any time and appreciate the asynchronous nature of video messaging because very often their schedules do not have to sync in order for them to communicate with each other. So, we started by asking whether compliance can be solved by an app. I will leave you with the results of a recent study that split a practice of providers into 2 groups. In the first, the providers were to answer the question, will I recover, with the sentence, I believe that if you follow this course of treatment, you will recover. The second group was told to respond, there is an 85% chance that if you follow this course of treatment, you'll recover. Well, the results were staggering. Compliance to the treatment plan was 83% higher by the patients who heard that first sentence. While statistics and science lead us forward, it is ultimately the connection between the patient and the provider that determines the commitment to the course of treatment. I invite you to join us at AC Health and experience that same increase in patient compliance in your practice. And I look forward to answering all of your questions. Please get in touch at your earliest convenience.